All right, welcome back, folks. So at this point, you should have completed the introductory philosophy and principles lecture of this module. Here, we're going to be doing the first of several talks that basically walk through the process of research. As we've talked about, statistics happen in research, so we're going to talk a little bit about different considerations and ideas that go into research. We are going to be breaking the research process down into 9 different steps. You can do a couple more, a couple less, but this is the one that works for me. One kind of general note about this: do not memorize this list. It's not the sort of thing I'm going to be testing you on. The ideas that come up at different points in the process are important, and we're going to see them on testing materials in this unit and probably in future units because they keep coming up. But I'm not going to give you like a blank sheet of paper and say list these 9 steps. Don't do that. That's not a great use of time. But what we are going to do today is talk about the first 2 steps here: finding a research idea, figuring out what we want to test, and converting it into something that's testable. Remember, we talked about testability a lot in that philosophy lecture, the idea of turning it into a form we can work with. So that'll be our focus here, and then we'll move on to these other steps in subsequent lectures. So starting at the beginning, before you can conduct research, you have to know what you're trying to research. You have to have some kind of a question or an area of interest, something that you want to know more about, a specific prediction that you believe is accurate. For people that do this professionally, usually that's based on a theory. Maybe they want to support a theory, maybe they want to refute it, contradict it. For beginning researchers, a lot of times it's based on intuition or just beliefs they have about human behavior. It can be any sort of source. But one of the first things to figure out is, what are we actually going to do with this research? So research is generally either basic or applied in focus. And basic research generally kind of means knowledge for knowledge's sake. Conducting basic research is about developing or supporting a theory, or again, sometimes we try to tear theories down, we try to contradict them. But it's just, we want to know this because we want to know more about the topic. There's no focus on immediate application or immediate usage. Applied research, on the other hand, is research that you intend to directly use. I want to use these findings not just to enhance my theory on depression. I want to actually change people's depression levels. I want to use it therapeutically. I want to use this research on persuasion, how people are convinced to change their minds, not just for theories of persuasion, but I actually want to put materials together for like a health communication campaign to reduce the rate of, say, skin cancer or something like that. That's application. I'm going to put this to work very shortly after running this study. So research can be a mix of both of those, and as noted there, basic research oftentimes leads to application down the line, but usually we're going one way or the other. Now, whether we use basic research or applied research, here's the first big hurdle that psychologists and researchers in other fields tend to face. Research in psychology oftentimes hinges on what we call hypothetical constructs. A hypothetical construct is something that's really meaningful, but it doesn't physically, tangibly exist, not in any sort of directly measurable way. So, for example, emotions. People's emotional states are extremely important in psychology. They're very influential. They're very kind of powerful states. But you can't, take an emotion out and weigh it. You can't dissect it and look at the different structures that make up an emotion. Emotion is a label that we give to a cluster of things: the way that we process information, the physical responses we have, the experience of being happy or angry or sad or whatever other emotion, and the behaviors that it leads to. But it isn't physically there. Same thing with things like self-esteem, with people's beliefs, other thoughts. These are things that are abstract, they're intangible, we can't directly measure them. Can't read people's minds, for example. We have to figure out a way to indirectly represent them. So we're going to be talking throughout this research process about a recent research example of a study called Washing Away Your Sins. So here's the premise of Washing Away Your Sins. These researchers noted that in a lot of different cultures, people consistently associate immorality with uncleanliness. We talk about having dirty thoughts or a dirty mind or getting your head out of the gutter. The idea there is that immoral thinking is somehow physically unclean in a sense. So what they wanted to figure out is, does feeling immoral make people feel dirty? So we got 2 variables here: feeling immoral, feeling dirty. Both of them are pretty abstract. Since we can't read other people's minds, we can't directly know if they're feeling immoral or if they feel unclean. So how do we turn this into something we actually can work with, something we can quantify, something that we can directly measure or perhaps directly manipulate? The way that we do this is by creating what are called operational definitions. An operational definition is not like a dictionary definition. You can think of it in a more modern term as a working definition. Operational definition means how are you going to operate with this? How are you going to work with it? So an operational definition is a way of taking a hypothetical construct and changing it into a form where it can be measured, it can be quantified. You can attach numbers to it. So how did our researchers come up with operational definitions for feeling immoral and feeling dirty? Well, here's a direct quote from their article, and I'm going to read it, and I want you to see if you can spot the operational definitions. Recalling a previous immoral behavior will increase the likelihood of participants using antiseptic wipes to clean their hands afterwards, relative to remembering an ethical behavior. Can you spot the operational definitions, how feeling immoral and feeling dirty are being represented in that paragraph? Tick, 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 tick. Here we go. In the green, we see how they operationally define feeling immoral. They had some participants recall a previous immoral behavior, and other participants remember an ethical behavior. This is what's called a manipulation. They're actually controlling how that variable changes. But the assumption there is that people that remember something bad they did in the past are going to feel more immoral than people that remember something good they did in the past. So that's how they're trying to represent that variable, and in this case, they're directly trying to control that variable, to change it from one participant to the next. In the purple, we see our representation of feeling dirty. We give participants the opportunity to use like a little antiseptic hand wipe, a little Purell wipe. We see those all the time. So the idea there is that people who feel dirty, who feel more physically unclean, are going to be more motivated to do basic cleaning behaviors, and they're going to show a preference for that cleaning product, that antiseptic wipe. So that's how they decided to represent those variables. They can't assess them directly. They can't get into people's minds and figure out if they feel immoral, if they feel dirty. But this is a way that it's going to be represented in a study that allows them to operate on it, to work with it. The other asset of operational definitions, they can give us enough detail or enough information so that other researchers could do the same thing. They could replicate. Sometimes we pick the ones that most closely fits how we're thinking about the construct, and there's oftentimes resource concerns. There might be a great way of operationally defining something that would be super expensive and onerous to do. We usually, unfortunately, avoid that. The difference, the transition between hypothetical constructs and operational definitions is going to matter throughout this course, but it's going to matter a lot should you take a research methods course down the line. So keep that in mind and keep thinking about how hypothetical constructs are being changed to operational definitions. That's the end of this introductory piece of the research process. Please continue on to part 2, and I will see you there.